a bit more. The introduction is on the screen. Ellamae is the absolute stigma shaker. She is the founder of Baba Womb, Mind Over MRKH, incredible podcast if you ever want to listen to it. And I personally attended the Vaginal Festival this year, which Ellamae is the co-creator of. It's fantastic. And Ellamae is the absolute advocate of why we need to shake up some stigma and tackle taboo head on. So Ellamae, over to you. Thank you.
Go for it. Thank you so much, Abby. That was lovely. I don't need to do that bit then. Yeah, I'm Ellamae. Nice to. Sorry. That's my water bottle. That's part of the thing. Looks like a dilator. No, it doesn't. Sorry. Yeah, so a little bit about my MRKH story. So I was diagnosed when I was 16, and I'm 29, 30 on Monday now. It's like 29, but in only for 2 more days. And yeah, at 16, I won't go too much into my story because I've got loads of slides, which is pretty much how my brain works. I cram as much into things as I can. And I did dilation with not much sort of research or understanding, no sort of disrespect to any of the hospitals or the advice that they gave. There just wasn't as much pleasure education and sort of reasons you do this. Why are you doing this? Why are you choosing to dilate? And for me, it's because I felt broken. I felt less woman. Not everyone identifies as a woman, but I did, and I felt very much less because I felt like I couldn't have sex with the people I wanted to have sex with, and those were people with penises and men. And I think penetration. Obviously, trigger warning. I'm going to talk a lot about sex and pleasure and vaginas before I start. So yeah, that's a bit of me, and obviously, Ali's spoken through the things that I'm doing at the moment. And then we've also got a WhatsApp group in London. There's about 70 of us in there, so if anyone wants to join that afterwards, you're more than welcome. I know everyone's covered the anatomy, but I just love just having a visual of things. Obviously, this is male upper tendency Kuster-Hauser syndrome, and I just wanted to kick it off by saying all vaginas are different. And I think for me, this talk is about vaginal dilation and vaginal lengthening options. But the stuff that's really important to me is understanding vaginas, what a vagina is, what vaginas are like for people without MRKH. And I know that Amy's an expert on this stuff, and this is not medical advice or anything like that. This is just stuff I found on the internet. So this is like examples of people without MRKH. You can have during menstrual cycles, your cervix can be lower. It could naturally be lower. So a person with a low cervix naturally might find sex uncomfortable, similar to some of us. And actually, it's fairly similar to our diagnosis of having an absent or underdeveloped vagina. So yeah, that's just a little example, and it's something that I found really interesting because I thought my friends would never be able to relate to my body, but actually knowing that some of them said, oh no, I find it really hard having sex with someone because it kind of hits the end, and I go, oh, I feel like that too. And that kind of just connecting with each other, it makes the conversations easier because we feel so different to our friends that do have wombs and vaginas, but actually we're all just different to each other, like Esther said in Amy's presentation. So with MRKH, obviously, again, with MRKH, we are all different as well. And that's the biggest message I wanted to give from people with absent vaginas. And it's totally okay if you do have an absent vagina, medium length. I don't know, I'm not describing the lengths here, but yeah, we're all different. And obviously, vaginal length and width increases, decreases when aroused or anything like that. So I'm just going to talk about some of the options, because that was the biggest part of the information I was supposed to be giving today. So vaginal dilation is one that probably lots of people do know about. It's essentially holding with pressure on using the tools dilators. They're very clinical looking things. You hold with pressure on a regular basis for 20 to 30 minutes to slowly stretch the vagina over time or to maintain a vagina after surgery. I don't have too much expert advice on surgery, but I have got slides to go through some of the options you have got for surgery afterwards. And I will talk a bit about the fact there's no wrong or right way to dilate. This is just kind of how I did it for a few months and got to where I wanted to be, but everyone is different, and that's my biggest message. Surgery, Ali, I can't pronounce all of these. There's lots of different surgeries. I'll fly through them. In fact, I'm not going to try and pronounce all of them because I'll muck it all up. You can have a look here, but there's no, and I think Amy spoke through some, and I don't have a personal experience with surgery, so I don't know too much about them. I think they're named after the people that could have founded them, similar to Mayo, Octanski, etc., etc. This is a slide that Annie had created for global MRKH. Surgery is not as common in the UK, I believe. You're more expert on this, but I think it's because dilation is kind of less invasive, could be less invasive, and also people find that it's quite successful for their own personal journeys through just dilation. And obviously there is some people that have had surgery, and that's totally fine. There's lots of different countries where that is the norm. And yeah, so the main thing here is to seek medical advice, speak to your gynecologist or your MRKH specialist about what's best for you, and also just learn about the options. I didn't really learn about surgery because I wasn't offered it, or it wasn't put on a plate for me, and I just went with the dilation. But actually some people might find surgery is a better option for them and find it that it's something that they really want to do in their own journey. So dilation or vaginal lengthening hour-wise, I sort of asked the community a while ago on Instagram, why do you do this, and why have you chosen to lengthen your vagina? And some answers then came back. Sorry, I was told she was not supposed to be on it. That's supposed to be on a why not to feel less different, to have penetrative sex, because I enjoy penetrative sex, to feel more relaxed during the IV, which is pubic in vagina, sex with a partner, to have more sexual options, to feel less anxious in new relationships, and just help psychologically or with my mental health. So there's loads of different reasons, no right or wrong way as to whether or not you decide to do vaginal lengthening. Big message from me is just to respect yourself throughout the process of choosing, of thinking, of you're like, because you are not broken. Similar to Charlie's slide about infertility, it's the same with our vaginas and our bodies. You are not broken. You don't need to be fixed. And I've actually just put together some wrong reasons, and there's no one's right or wrong. And actually, a lot of us have felt like this, and that's not wrong to feel like that, and I certainly did. But things that you shouldn't be going towards this decision-wise, because you feel you need to be fixed, you feel broken. It makes you less woman or less worthy if you don't identify as a woman. My partner won't accept me, my partner won't feel pleasure, and I have to do this to have sex, because sex is a lot more than penetration. So excuse the strange legs. So decision-making checklist. So obviously I've said it before, just seek medical advice, just speak to experts about, because obviously all of our vaginal lengths are different. And that just means that you just need a bit more expert advice in where you're at with your own personal body. Look into therapy options, talk it through. I know that Susan's our expert in that field, so obviously have a chat with Susan about where you can find support afterwards as well. Have a support network, talk to other MRKHs, not something that I did when I was younger, but I kind of feel it would have been a nicer experience if I had that support network. Ask yourself why lengthening your vagina it's important to you, make sure the answer is always for you, and monitor your psychological reaction. So just, are you feeling negative about this? Are you feeling it is really traumatic? Are you feeling sort of traumatized by it? Is it embarrassing? And how are you coping? I think it's important to process those feelings before you rush into something that could be really traumatic for a very young person. And I won't talk through all of those, but there's loads of ways to cope during, if you do decide to go through with vaginal lengthening. Lots of lube is always my biggest tip. It's okay not to be okay, like I mentioned. It can be truly heartbreaking and traumatic. Talking about dilation, experiencing dilation, when I was doing it personally, I used to cry because it reminded me of my infertility and all that sort of stuff. And it was only slowly over time I started to incorporate pleasure and things like that. And that's where my dilation journey became less clinical and more, actually, I can enjoy this, and this is because I want to do something positive with my body. So yeah, just reach out. Remember, loads of people use dilators for vaginismus and after surgeries and different cancers that people might get. So there's lots of different people in the world using these tools, and it's not just us. We're not weird or abnormal. They are just a tool to help us feel better about ourselves, and I think that's why we need to just destigmatize the word dilator. Take your time, your body, your choice, your pace, always. And yeah, there's things you can do, like keeping a diary, a bit of humour, you know, that's how I coped. Dilation kit. So if you want to get anyone, or a daughter, friend or whatever, some gifts just to destigmatise it. My friend Soph has actually helped me with this before, and I think she's so great at just saying, look, she's got a really nice bang for her dilators, and she just makes it into something positive, even though it's something quite negative. So do not disturb, buy yourself presents, get lots of lube, keep a diary, listen to music, get things for comfort. There's so many things you can do to just make it into a more positive experience for yourself. And this is just to touch on the fact that not everyone dilates. And I think people, when I was younger, I was like, what? How do people with MRKH not do it? How do they live? And actually, majority of orgasms in women and vulva owners are clitoral. So that's one thing people kind of go, oh, I don't think I need a vaginal canal to enjoy sex, given that sex is more than penetration. People sometimes dilate or create a vagina through sexual intercourse, so they may just enjoy sex with their partner. Slowly their vagina becomes used to that person, or not, and obviously that's where having sex without penetration can come into place. And things like sex toys or pleasure aids, potential stimulators, things like that, and I'll show you a few pictures of some in a minute, not to make you too uncomfortable. Yeah, just take it slowly, and I think dilation can be really traumatic or painful, and some people just actually say that's not for them, and that's okay. If you don't do it, it's fine, you can stay as you are, because we are, at the end of the day, we are all enough just as we are. Just a few little slides about incorporating pleasure, because I will probably hand you over to Nicole at some point, who's our expert in this field. And again, pleasure, not for everyone, for many different reasons, be it cultural or just trauma or anything like that. So apologies if these slides are in any way not for you. Yeah, so pleasure can help with natural lubrication of your vagina, which I'll explain a little in a minute. Can relax and widen the vagina, and it helps you learn about your body. I think my biggest mission is, like that Annie said, shaking stigma. I just think that I used to be really ashamed by sitting in my room and, sorry to put too much information, having a vaginal dilator in my body while my dad or mum was downstairs, and I just felt so awkward. And my mum just said, look, I really wish I would have bought you a sex toy when you were younger. And I was like, I kind of wish you had too, because I think it would have made me feel more normal about it. And because I do all this stuff now, and I feel like she kind of is now gutted that it was too much of a stigma for her to talk to me about the sex side of things. And she kind of said to the nurse, has she got a clitoris? And they were like, yes, don't worry. And I think so for her, she, as a mum, she wanted me to enjoy sex just as much as she did, which is a weird thing to say, but not yet. Yeah, exactly, not in this room at all. A little bit about the vulva. So obviously when you do vaginal dilation, you're focusing on the inside, which is the vagina. The vulva is actually everything on the outside, and it holds a lot more magic actually than the inside. And clitoris, labia, all that sort of stuff. This is actually a cast from Lydia Reed's artist. And I do think I'm obsessed with vulva positivity. So if you go and check out pages like Lydia Reed's, I think being comfortable with your body can also just help that vaginal dilation process, because it's a lot of trauma. It's a lot of me thinking my vagina was really different, made me actually really worried about what I looked like on the outside. And I think I was so worried about labia and things like that, because actually when your insides are kind of different, you kind of feel, do I look all right on the outside? Am I pretty enough? Is my vulva good enough? And actually they're all different. Just as Esther said, our genitals are as diverse as our faces. And again, with vaginal dilation, always find it really important to just touch on the kind of anatomy side of things. You've actually got, when it comes to natural lubrication, you've got like schemes, glands that sit around the urethra, our foaming glands that kind of create natural moisture when aroused, not for everyone, but for lots of different people. So we're not that different in lots of different ways. And the clitoral structure is kind of a hidden structure that sits behind the vulva. The bit that we can see is the gland clitoris. So yeah, and obviously this is someone without MRKH, and our vaginal canal might stop there, but we've still got all of that on the outside, which is like the epitome of pleasure, and it all sits on the outside. That's that in a different way. There's me posing on some sex toys, just had to chuck that in there. Clitoral pleasure, and I do think people think of sex toys and they go, big scary dildos and things like that, and I think actually there's so many nice looking ones that don't look too scary or traumatic, and I know it's a bit uncomfortable to some people that haven't sort of delved into self-love, self-exploration, which I know again Nicole's going to be touching on a lot, but do just look into different sort of tools, and do call them tools, because actually these can really help with your mental health, general feeling good, your all that sort of stuff. So, and they can help with dilation as well if you want something smaller, prettier, less clinical, less looking like a horrible white tube that you've got from the hospital. So many different things that just look really pretty that you can use to make you feel better. This is the end, I think. So lengthening FAQs, and actually I don't have any answers for these. They were just on the screen because I do think my answer was going to be at the end. There's no right or wrong with any of these things, and actually everyone's totally different. How long do you need to do it for? Can't answer that for you. I did it for 3 months. Some people do it for a year, some people do it forever, some people don't do it at all. And it's just about getting to know your own body. So will my vagina shrink if I don't have sex? Can't answer it, I don't know. Mine personally didn't. I think I sort of carried on having sex. Sometimes I stop for like 3 months just because that's what happens in relationships, and it doesn't change that much, but I do sort of feel a little bit different sometimes, but again, different for everybody. Can I have an orgasm without dilation? Of course you can, based on previous slides. And what's better? Again, it's all just, it's up to you. I've covered the other stuff as well. And how do I talk to friends and family about dilation? Again, it's one of those things where we're talking to someone outside. I think it's about, if you want to talk about it, that's fine, but not many people talk about their sex lives. Not many people talk about their vulvas and vaginas, unless you're me, if you've got a page about it. But I feel like it's not the norm, but it can be if you want it to be. And actually, if you wanted to talk to your friends about pleasure, and lots of like girl groups get together and talk about sex, something that I found really difficult when I was younger is getting involved in conversations with my mates about sex, and have you had an orgasm, or how long have you been having sex for, or whatever. And I found it so hard to have those conversations because I just felt like I couldn't get involved, and I was like, oh, but I don't have that, so clearly I can't talk about this. But actually, the more I've done on this, the more I realise that we can totally get involved in those conversations, and we do, our experience is totally valid, and people can actually learn a lot from us, because I think we learn a lot about ourselves. And I think through MRKH I've learned way more about my body than a lot of my friends have learned about theirs, and I think I've been teaching them about the clitoris and pleasure and orgasms more than they know, and they've got vaginas and wombs, so hey, we know more. Thank you.